Welcome to My Favorite CX, a podcast that celebrates exceptional customer experiences. To listen to today's, please choose from one of the following options.
Welcome to My Favorite Customer Experience, the podcast that celebrates positivity in the world of customer experience. I'm Chris Holt, your host from Holt CX Consultancy over here in the UK, and I'm joined by Max Ball from Forrester. Max, welcome aboard.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me. This will be fun.
So, for those of you who don't know Max, Max has a background in product marketing, working for the likes of Genesis, 8x8, and Ring Central, where we first met about 2 weeks before a global pandemic, when we thought we were going to be meeting plenty of times. And I've just managed to get my first guest to spit coffee over their desk. More recently, Max has been working for the last few years at Forrester, where he is a principal industry analyst, looking after the CX, CC, and UC spaces, and gets a great view of what's going on in that industry. And is also a podcast co-host himself of CX Therapy, which has just recently launched its 5th season. Max, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what it is you do for Forrester?
Sure. So I have in the Forrester world, your core is what are called waves, and that's a evaluative report where you compare different vendors in a space. So the two spaces I do waves for are CCaaS, which is kind of the core contact center software, and conversational AI, which is chatbots and voice bots. So that is my core. And then I spend a lot of my time talking to customers and vendors. So I have, multiple conversations a week with different people at different contact centers about whatever's on their mind at any given time.
And I guess, CCAS has been, I want to say static, but maybe that's the wrong word. It's been fairly conventional for a few years. We saw most people move to cloud, 8 to 6 years ago, and then consolidation there. More so the
There's
vendors, not
still,
necessarily the customers.
it's shocking and depressingly slow moving to the cloud. It's
Yeah.
still way more than a majority is on-prem. But yes, people are slowly moving to the cloud at this point.
The vendors are certainly in the cloud, and they're like, come this
Yes,
way, join
yes.
us.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Um,
on the vendor side, absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas I guess conversational AI is evolving at such a breakneck speed that you must be, you must write a report and then look at it and go, well, that's out of date already.
Yeah, and I did the wave on conversational AI for customer service almost exactly a year ago. And I mean, that's a decade in generative AI years. It's just crazy how much has evolved in that time. And it was even writing it. I mean, it was, it's like a 4 month process or so from, okay, I got all my answers to my questions. Here it is out. Huge changes, just even within that time. I've never, it's pretty exciting, our times, right? It's, generative and LLMs just mean some really cool things. What I'm curious about at the moment, and I hope it's just because I haven't been looking that much recently, I've seen a lot of really cool demos. I've not talked to a lot of really cool self-service apps. So I just finished a CCAS wave. So I've been much more focused on that part of the world. Now I'm going to start shifting my focus, and I'm really excited to see. Not yes, I'm excited to see what the vendors have, but more so what people are really doing in the real world with it at this point.
And I think that's where we're maybe getting towards with conversational AI, in that for a couple of years it was quite nascent and it was a lot of demo. There was some artistic interpretations I remember being involved with in the past. And maybe that. Yeah, artistic interpretation is probably the best summary of one of those demonstrations I put together. Um, and I think now we're getting to the point where we're seeing real world examples. We had Craig Geronda from Vertical on the show recently, and he talked about some of the work they've done with the likes of Cognigy. You're seeing real world examples now of adoption and constant evolution.
Yeah, yeah. That's and there with generative, there's just such cool things we're going to be able to do. And the piece in self-service that I think is really practical now is what I call infrequently asked questions. So you got frequently asked questions, here's the 10 questions, that's half my traffic. I can hard code those, if you will. And then after that, there's this infinite tail of other things people may ask. Take generative and RAG and point it, please God, put it in a knowledge base, but point it at a bunch of PDFs, and you can start answering those in a way that we've never been able to before. And from everything I understand, the biggest hallucination risk with that now is um, conflicting documents under the covers. So that seems to be pretty real, but I've not, again, it's out there. I've seen a little bit of it, but not nearly as much as I would have thought at this point.
That's certainly what I'm seeing as well with certain vendors where knowledge is now the foundation. If you don't look after your knowledge, then, and you certainly see quite a few vendors making acquisitions or strides in that area because they're realizing that's the foundational piece. And if they can get that right, then it makes everything else just flow quite nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, we've both there spoken about things that are cool, which we're on a contact center or customer experience podcast. So maybe people don't expect that word, but I think, for me as well, like data within the contact center and customer experience realm has been in so many silos for so many years.
Oh God.
This is also now giving us the brain power to be able to actually crunch it and get insights out of it more easily.
I spent a couple of years ago. I, this is the life of an analyst. I say sentences like, I was doing research for a presentation that I gave at a conference. I'm used to working at the vendor where it's like, yeah, I slapped some slides together and went and talked. And what what we were looking at, and this was 22. What we were looking at is, I've got all these call recordings, and now this was pre-generative, still with AI, I can go do that. I can do I can speech to text. Now I can do analytics. I can turn it into quantifiable data. It is the real voice of the customer. And that it is super useful in the contact center. It makes quality management better, on and on and on. Um, but what we were interested in, this was another analyst and I, and the other analyst was focused on voice of the customer stuff. So what we wanted to do was look at who's taking these recordings and using them for voice of the customer use cases. And one of the calls that we did in the research, we talked to the voice of the customer people and said, what if you could actually get data from the actual voice of the customer, the calls they made to the contact center? And the answer was, oh, we'd never do that. That would devalue our surveys. And there's such a structural challenge, even when the technology eventually technology is going to make it so easy that anybody can do it, and it's just going to start happening. And we're closer and closer and closer to that. And I'm seeing it used more. But and even then, we did a panel of people who were doing interesting things, and it was Amex, Capital One, TIAA. I mean, people have been doing some of this for years, but the structural challenges of getting the contact center guys to talk to the marketing guys or the sales guy or whatever, that honestly, at this point, that's a bigger barrier than the technological one.
Oh yeah, work silos. I think when we talked earlier about how, not everyone's moved to the cloud yet. And if you haven't, or if you're in that early hosted kind of scenario, you've got a telephony admin, you've got a reporting admin, you've got someone else, a whole team that does quality, and they don't talk to each other. And when you first bring in CCAS, and then, some people try to go straight to conversational AI and don't realize you might want a foundation before that. And it's like, right, you guys, you're all in the same company, you're all in the same room now, get along. And it doesn't always happen because you've got this structure of, well, this is my job, this is your job. And
Right,
yeah, I
right.
mean, I mean, devaluing a survey, well, you've got all this rich data that tells you from every single call, not just the ones that answered yes or no on a survey, which is, and generally you only get the biggest detractors or the biggest promoters at that point anyway.
Exactly. And anybody, imagine working in that field where every day you are reminded, oh, all I'm getting are people who really hate me. Um, how do you not hear that and go, wow, that would be cool? It just blew my mind that somebody would have that attitude. It's
So I guess with all of this change, it must be pretty exciting to try and keep a handle on what's moving within the especially conversational AI piece.
it is. It's fascinating. One of the pieces that's really interesting to me is I started in earnest doing the wave in early 24. And in early 23, all of the conversational AI vendors were looking at ChatGPT and going, oh, I have a story that's every 6 weeks. I can get you one new intent with the answers, and you can put together a very brittle workflow that puts those together. Um, I ain't gonna cut it against this stuff. So that was, I always say March of 23, and that's just random. November is when it got announced, but it took everybody a little while to kind of get it absorbed. By the time I was getting demos in January of 24, the 14 leading vendors that were part of that survey all had generative in the middle of what they were doing. I mean, the tooling was funky in some cases, and there were pieces that were more this way than that way, but they literally all had to reinvent themselves, and they all did it in 9 months. And most amazing thing I've ever seen. The CCAS guys are all making bank doing call summarization where it's internal facing, so you don't have to worry about hallucinations or anything like that. It's super valuable. So they do that. And then they start doing quality management and they do analytics. And eventually they get to agent assist tools. They're way behind on self service with this because they don't have, it wasn't existential for them like the point solution guys. They're getting there. It will be, it's a way to do it. But, if somebody wants to do a generative AI driven self service app today, you probably want to talk to the point solution guys. That won't that moat isn't very high, very deep. I guess moats aren't high. Um, that moat isn't very deep, but it's there at the moment.
I mean, that's certainly something I'm seeing as I get to know that market of like, do you want to go with a vendor solution when you could, all of the prime players in conversational AI bolt in to all the CCAS vendors because they've already seen, well, this is something you're not doing as well. So we can bolt in and make that happen quite easily. And I think we're at a different point. If we were 10 years ago, getting that to all bolt together would be a long project. But now it's a couple of clicks and it's really
Yeah,
not at
yeah,
all as hard as it used to be.
and we were both at Ring Central. The whole story was the average contact center manages 20 vendor relationships. The bar to take on a point solution is significant.
Hmm.
But to your point, it can be relatively easy to put it in there. you got to deal with reporting at that point. It's nice if that's all consolidated, but a lot of the CCAS guys, their consolidated reporting isn't all that consolidated anyway. Although they've gotten much better with that. I must give them kudos for that.
Certainly getting there, I would say. And it's interesting
Yes.
actually seeing some of the new solutions come in. You're right on the internal facing side of CCAS. Some of the co-pilot things where there are certain prompts that work really nicely, and there are also certain ones where it doesn't quite know what to do with it just yet. So I was playing with one of the supervisor apps and asked the guarded questions that it wants you to ask them, and I said, "Who should I fire today?" And it's like, "I'm not answering that. That's not
Oh,
something."
okay,
I
good.
don't think it quite said it like that. It was just like, "I think we should rephrase that question." I'm like, "Okay, how close can I get to maybe
Yeah.
not?"
What?
Um, Max, we'll take a break there. We'll place our listeners and viewers on hold, where they'll hear some delightful hold music. Maybe you've got some
Mm,
recommendations there. And we'll come back and ask you about your favorite customer experience.
okay, sounds great.
Your current wait time is 72 minutes. To hear options to be connected to a favorite customer agent sooner, please dial 9 on your keypad now.
Welcome back to my favorite customer experience. I'm here this week with Max Ball from Forrester. And Max, before we placed everyone on hold there and listened to our own conversational AI bot, Holty, I said I was going to ask you about your favorite customer experience. So it can be a recent one or a historical one, but why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, I'll do that. I did a really good job of preparing, knowing the name of this podcast and not thinking it through until you asked me when we started talking here. Um, this is a couple years old, so not really historic. Um, Definitely far afield from contact center or anything like that. This is eating in Italy, specifically in Tuscany. We went there, we were in Florence. This was a year ago last fall, so fall of 23. And we were, there were two couples, and we were looking for a place to eat. And we found, I went on to Yelp and found a place, and I'm like, oh, this is great. This place sounds wonderful. And, I'd had an experience many, many years ago in Paris where I was close to the Eiffel Tower with one of my kids, and we went to a restaurant that was right there, and it was just god awful. And then the next time I went, a friend of mine used Yelp, and we found a place, and it was sublime. I've been there a couple times since, and it's just one of my favorite restaurants in the universe. And it was 3 blocks away. So yeah, I'm like, okay, Yelp says this one's good. We're going to go there. And we walked down there, and it was closed. And I don't mean it was closed for the evening. It was out of business. It was closed. So okay, so what do we do? We're just kind of like confused. I'm getting out my phone, and we just walked down. There was another restaurant. We're like, let's just eat here. We're hungry. Let's just eat. So we went in, and they, we got greeted. Oh, come here, sit here, and we sat down, and um, they they came up and they gave us the menus, and we were getting kind of chatty, and wine appeared. I don't even remember anybody ordering it. It just kind of magically appeared, and they just let us do that for a while, and came up, and we ordered, and they were coaching us, no, 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 don't get that, get this. And we got I forget what kind of steak it is. Um, and we saw it over at another table, and like the bone is sticking up this way, and all the steak is cut in this just beautiful artistic way around it. And, this is not a snooty anything restaurant. It's just a very almost cafe-like feel to it. And we're sitting there, and we looked up and noticed next to the cash register, there was a little painting, and there were four faces in it. And, so we're just kind of noticed that. Oh, that's nice. And then we're, the pasta's coming, whatever, the salad, and all the food is just amazing. And as we're sitting there, we suddenly go, wait, the woman who's waiting on us, that's the face on the left in the painting. And then a little later, somebody else came up and checked up on us, and that was the guy in the painting. And then a third person showed up, and it was the younger guy. And then eventually a woman walked in. We looked, that's the third. And it was the parents and the kids, and this was their restaurant. And this was the night the daughter had off. So she came in to check in on things. But it was so personal to them that they had their picture right there, a painting, not a photograph, right there on the wall. And they were, every ounce of it was just, how's it going? And it just, I don't know restaurants in the US that work like restaurants in Italy where this person is running a restaurant because it is their passion to share an amazing eating experience with people who come in. And that's what they're there for. And it's not, it's not McDonald's, but it's not expensive in any way, shape, or form. And it just, it wasn't just the food, it was the pacing, and that they just knew when we were ready. We never said we wanted anything next or anything like that. It just showed up right at the exact right moment. It was just magical. And then, they gave us little limoncellos at the end of the evening, and I've got a picture of us all, like, just our hands there toasting that. And it just, the attention to detail, and most of all the passion, just that, we're here to provide an amazing dining experience. That's what we're about. And I don't, I picked that one. We didn't not have that, didn't not, we always had that experience when we were there. There was another place we went, and it was in the catacombs of an old building outside of San Gimignano, which is a little hill town. And the owner came up to us and said, "Hey, come with me." And he took us down into the catacombs and gave us a tour and started talking to us about, this was an orphanage, and here's where the children slept. And it was, that does not happen in the United States at all when you're dining. It's somebody's making minimum wage and they're hoping to get some tips. And there's corporate rules about what they can do and share, and any of the food or anything like that. It's a factory. It's not a restaurant. And I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, but there's just way too much of that. So there's my little story.
And I guess that tells us a few things. And the first is that exceptional doesn't have to be expensive.
Yes, yes. I mean, and that, that's another point I've thought of, is where I have had similar experiences of just a truly waiter being on it and being right there and anticipate is when you're paying $100 or more a person. It's so you can get that here, but you're paying for it in a way that
Yeah.
just, yeah,
And it's almost expected
absolutely.
at that point. If you're
It better
paying,
be,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, with inflation, maybe it's more 150 to 200 a person now, but
I
yeah,
think it's one of those, of the sounds of it as well, of like you're essentially welcomed into their home. Their restaurant is their home. You're there experiencing their hospitality and everything. And I think it sounds like, yeah, hopefully that's still there in generations to come, because it's
yeah,
that personal touch that, and if we go back to even how you found that, and it was almost by accident because the Yelp choice had closed down, but we now outsource our restaurant choices. Whenever I go to a new city, I use Google Maps instead, and it's like, right, anything below a four, I've got to really, really want it, and then I'll go through
right,
a
right.
justification loop of, okay, and actually, I'll then go, oh, well, this is a, we were in another part of the country, just this weekend, And sadly, Monday night, everything was closed. I was like, oh, there's this Sri Lankan place and it's 4.8. That means it's exceptional.
Amazing.
Yeah. I know, I mean, at that point, I know I can just walk in and it's going to be excellent. Um, but I think that's really interesting now. I mean, we've got this crowdification almost of choice. We're not going to just go to the Eiffel Tower and go to the restaurant next door because we know
Right.
it's a tourist trap. We'll go to the one 3 streets down because it will be better. And that
Right.
risk is kind of taken away now. Whereas, yeah, when my parents used to take me away to like Spain at the start of the 90s, like every other Brit did, it was, wow, hopefully they serve omelette and chips for the little ones and we'll just take a risk.
Right. Yeah. It looks nice. That should be good enough. And in this case, that was all we did. Looked nice, looked friendly. Had a big piece of meat in the front door. I'm kind of like, well, I like meat. It, not scientific or thought out at all. And yeah, it is interesting. And I don't know how malleable something like a Yelp or a Google, those scores are. But you're right. If something has a really outstanding score, I top ahead, I don't have one where I walked in expecting something wonderful and ended up getting something awful.
Yeah. So in terms of influencing your behaviors, did you pay it back with a Yelp review?
I had good intentions. So I don't do Yelp reviews. I mean I'm not I have not, that is not a part of my social media world, any reviews. So no, I didn't. I think the last one I did was a barber who just begged so much, and she was really nice, and I could tell her barbershop was really struggling. I'm like, oh, I have to give her a good review.
I think it takes us back to what we said in the first half, though, about voice of the customer using analytics versus surveys.
Yeah,
Adding that review, that's still effort on your part. Whereas if we juxtapose this across to CX, they would have the transcript of you and your party waxing lyrical and enjoying themselves, and they'd have all of that positivity in the analytics already, so they wouldn't need that external validation via the survey, for example.
right, right.
Well, Max, other than making me very hungry at 7:30 in the evening here, um, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Um, LinkedIn is probably the best way. Also, I do blogs and such on Forrester.com, so you can catch me there. Um, those are probably the best ways.
And CX Therapy is also available on
Oh
all.
gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I do a CX therapy podcast. Interestingly, very similar to what we did with the second half here, where we have a guest and the guest gives us a customer experience story, and then we break down what was good or bad about it. Now we're not you have the joy angle, so you're looking for happy stories. We're therapy. Uh, we welcome happy stories, but ask somebody about a customer service experience, and the odds of you're getting a happy one are pretty slim.
I've got about a dozen former guests that I can send your way then for some. Everyone starts with, oh, I've got to think of a good one, which just
Yeah. Oh,
tells you the
yeah.
state of customer experience in general. Well, Max, thank you very, very much for joining us. Listeners and watchers, thank you very much as well for joining my favorite customer experience.
Hey, Chris, this was a bunch of fun, and thanks everybody for listening.
We'll catch you again soon. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to My Favorite CX. Your listenership is important to us. On your keypad, please press a number between 1 and 5 to rank how much you've enjoyed your experience.